As you may know, Tier 2 drops on March the 6th in less than 3 weeks. So in this video, I want to cover my PvE Scorpion builds for Tier 2. This will easily get you double, if not triple, your current damage output without really changing your playstyle. Crossbow and Dagger is about one of the best classes for PvE single target burst damage. And yes, that still remains the case for Tier 2. Now with all this new gear coming, what should you actually be going for? Well, again, I've made some build templates that you can have a look at, and it's ultimately what I found so far to work out to give the most amount of damage. Again, versus Tier 1, just on a raw stat level, there's over 137% damage gain. So let's go through these different builds and ultimately which one I'll be working towards with the release of Talandre Tier 2 on March the 6th. So the first thing to consider here is not all builds are going to be accessible to everyone. There's going to be some that rely on, say, Archboss weapons or even Archboss gear. Even here on Korea, Queen Balandir weapons are still like over 30,000 lucent, out of the reach for most players. On top of the fact we're getting new archbosses, which drop even more best in slot gear, including this cloak, this bracelet, and even this helmet. And that's not even the only archboss, there's Cordy too. So this kind of build is just not practical. It's a dream build, but not something the general player base is going to be able to achieve. So we have this one, and that does not require any arch bosses, does not require any field bosses, because yes, we will be getting quite a few new field bosses, dropping a whole host of new gear too. A lot of it being, yeah, very good, but you can generally make do since the prices on these items will probably still be super high for quite some time. So a build like this is an awful lot more practical to the majority of players, and it even does not include nebula gear. You may be wondering what that is. Well, if we for example look at this necklace, the Frosty Deadman's necklace, it is priced at a whopping 40,000 lucent. It is a super rare item coming from Nebula Island. Basically, you're going to have to beat up bosses there. And these have an absolute ton of items on their loot table. So in order to get exactly what you want, it is an absolutely minuscule chance. So the practicalities of building around those items just is not there. That is why we have this second option. Now this second option does include everything that Tier 2 can bring. That includes purple runes, which we're unlikely to get day 1. And it also includes trait resonance, although that doesn't really matter much in PvE, because you're generally only going to use it for max health here, or mana, and then on the weapons, maybe a teeny bit of extra cooldown, or optionally heavy attack. And so you have the more realistic day 1 build, which has then blue runes, which we currently have and does not have any trait resonance. And all of this gear, super accessible. If we do have a quick damage comparison, we can see build 1 versus build 2. It's, going to be about a nearly 12% increase in damage in favor of build 1. And if we compare build 1 to build 3, it's nearly a 16% damage difference. So you do have room to min-max if you can, say, get those best in slot items, but it isn't going to be that bad. You will still perform super well. So let's go over these items and where you'll actually be getting them. We begin with the Berkant weapons, one of the most accessible weapon sets in Tier 2, as they'll simply come from the new 3-star dungeons. You will just have to get this dimensional essence. You can of course craft it or get it from the random queue. But yeah, 3-star dungeons, you're going to have to learn those. Honestly, it shouldn't be too hard, especially once you start power creeping it with new gear. And both of these are really good options for weapons and pretty much beat anything else you could run with. The only thing would be to, say, have Queen Balandirs, but again, it's an archboss weapon. instead of the Birkins. I would still run the Birkin daggers for that base damage boost. But then we go to the armor, and we have two sets here that we're using two pieces from. This Imperial Tracker set is going to give you upwards of 25% critical damage, and then the Abyss Slayer set with the maximum damage boost of 20. All of these pieces very easy to get. You're gonna have that Imperial Tracker headpiece simply coming from killing monsters in a new Abyss dungeon here, the Crimson Mansion, with the pants coming from also a new Abyss dungeon, the Temple of Truth. Then those Void Stalker arms you're gonna be getting from, yes, Void Wastes. It'll be included in the drop table if they actually update it, otherwise say 3-star dungeons, or even killing enemies within the Temple of Truth, with then those boots coming from Carmine Rage Island if they added in there, or while hunting a bunch of just regular enemies out in the open world, like this one here as well. And then that chest piece we're simply just using for those stats, the heavy attack and the perception in wisdom. You'll be able to obtain it simply by doing the new 3-star dungeon. After that we jump to accessories. And you have this pitch black destruction necklace. You'll get this item simply again from a 3-star dungeon, with also your bracelet from a 3-star dungeon too. Then your 2 rings, the Moon Star and the Pure Light, you'll get from a 3-star dungeon, and then killing enemies in, say, the Abyss dungeon, Birkin Mansion, like right here. And finally, your belt. This one achieved also from a 3-star dungeon. Now, just be aware, all of this content may get drip fed in one way or another, and what we do know is Korea did have milestones, and we may very well likely have it too. We begin with, say, magic ridden earth and end with, say, terrifying beings, and this lasted from August the 28th till September the 21st, so nearly a month long. And throughout those milestones you unlock, say, new events, new open world dungeons, new field bosses. So like getting the Temple of Truth might not be until a few days after launch. Same with the Birkin Mansion, you might not get that for a few weeks after launch, with the last one being the Crimson Mansion toward the end of these milestones. And finally, at the very end of the milestones, we get the arch bosses, probably a month later after Talandre drops, which yes means you won't be getting those new arch boss weapons, Del Zenoa and Cordy, until a month later into tier 2. So again, these are the builds that I have theory crafted, and so far what I could find works out as the best methods to maximize your damage. I have looked at, say, looking at max attack speed or max heavy attack or max base damage, where you're focusing pretty heavily on just those, but you end up at a certain point where you're spending a lot of investment just to get a few more points of, say, like attack speed, and it just ends up causing you to sacrifice a lot more of the other stats that it ends up just not worth it. And ultimately, Crossbow and Dagger doesn't really change that much in tier 2 in terms of how you play it. You'll have a lot more attack speed, you'll be able to get your rotation out a lot easier, and ultimately the core rotation and the basics of it don't really change. You're getting that lightning infusion, selfless diffusion, detonation mark, stacking those thunderclads, exploding them with your thunderclad bombings, and then pretty much just trying to stack the thunderclads and then use bombings again back to back to back during the uptime of detonation mark. And your sheer effectiveness in burst damage makes you, pretty much the best weapon combo to use for raw single target damage in that PvE content. The meta right now is pretty much to have like one crossbow and dagger user and the rest are bows due to that deadly marker, and you synergize very well with that. I'll cover more in separate videos where we'll go over different group compositions and ultimately what team buffs you can get to support the team creating different ideal setups. But that's it for now. I hope these builds serve as somewhat of a template of what you can work towards. what's possible here on Crossbow and Dagger to say min-max all that damage output. You need to be focusing on these certain stats here, like attack speed, offhand weapon attack chance, critical hit chance, heavy attack, skill damage boost, and definitely buff duration's a very important one. People miss stacking perception. I know I did at the beginning, and missing out on that buff duration. You really need it there. And then cooldown helps a load too, and don't miss out on having some decent hit points to be able to actually survive certain mechanics in those new dungeons. Particularly trait resonance will help a lot with that extra hit points here, but you won't generally get a lot higher than say 22,000, and that totally should be fine. Like even in tier 1 right now, you can do fine with only 10,000 hit points as long as you have a decent amount of skill damage resist. So thanks all for watching. If you have any of your own feedback that you'd like to share, I'd definitely like to have a look at it, as again, this is just theory crafting. Some of these things are not fully clear how they work until further testing is done, like the new masteries. There are some questionable things here, like whether or not to actually use extreme bloodlust or even like careful shot. And as a quick note, do try and get perception survival adept for the 2 extra perception, along with dexterity boost adept with the 2 extra dexterity. And yeah, these different mastery bonuses will help a ton in increasing your damage and just the utility as well. Oh, and I did quickly switch that. I was meant to have Eagle Claw instead of tactical counter attack. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye for now.